not going to do this for every Showdown slate, but when we can, we're going to give it a shot. So we're going to do a first look, which, as we know, especially as the season goes on, we're going to have a lot of questions going on. Later in the day, there's going to be injury reports. Actually, it already happened last week with Amari Cooper. Sheets, any sort of overall takes on the game?
Yeah, I do actually. Okay, so this is, I mean, on paper, like an incredibly tough spot for the Giants. Okay, they not only did they just come back from 100 points down in the last game, which is naturally leading to a letdown anyway, but losing Barkley at the end, like that, I mean, that's like devastating. And the short turnaround, given all of that, is really difficult. And why don't we just throw in San Francisco's home opener? You know what I mean? Like on national television, with the crowd's going to go freaking ballistic. And San Francisco is pretty damn good and tough to score on for openers. This is a rough spot for the Giants in a lot of ways. Now, with that said, this is the whatever in me. I was expecting this spread to be much bigger. I mean, I really did. I hadn't looked at it, and especially with Barkley out and all this, I was expecting it to be like 13. I really was. And I pulled it up, and I see like 10.5. And my thought is, who in the right mind is playing the Giants in this spot? So I'm probably going to try it. I mean, I'm not going to actually bet them, but I'm seriously considering playing them in the circa millions, not only because, first of all, I think it's going to be really contrarian, and number two, I'll get to this in the video I do on this, which is going to be late this afternoon. Very few people in that contest play the Thursday game, so it's going to be low on whichever side you take, and it's just such an uncomfortable play because every part of my brain tells me 20-0 or like 27-3. How in the earth are the Giants going to move the ball, among other things? So I think it's a tough spot for the Giants. But listen, it's a showdown. They're paying $1 billion. We'll figure something out. What do you think of the game in general before we get into the game?
Yeah, it's hard for me every time it gets over. If it's over 10.5, like if it's 10.5, which it is, like it's a little hard for me to go there. Like 9.5, I probably would have bet the Niners. But just there's so many games that end on that 10-point mark, and there's so many backdoor cover-up abilities here.
It's so funny that you say that before you go on, because that's exactly what I talk about in my in the circa millions thing. That's why I usually prefer to take the 9.5,
right,
10.5, because that's exactly what's logical that it lands on the 10. So all I'm trying to do there is trying to be contrarian. So I agree with you as far as that goes.
Right. And then there was a couple of 6.5 spreads earlier this season that had backdoor covers to 6. Like it's just. You want to try and stay away from those numbers. So I actually don't think I would bet anything, but I'll come up with something later today on the game. My initial thoughts are like, I think that I actually don't like San Francisco's. We talk about their defense, but like really, they have more offensive weapons than every team in football. And I think this is a chance to sort of utilize some of those. So it's sort of gives us some chances to do some different things at captain. And save some money rather than just playing the what's going to be the McCaffrey chalk, the Daniel Jones chalk, the Brock Purdy chalk. I'm not interested in any of those guys as captains, particularly. The only way I'd play Daniel Jones as a captain, I guess we'll start off with captains, would be if I was using the Niners defense in that same build. Because people just don't like to do that, and there's really no reason not to. It actually correlates really well when you play a defense against a quarterback on a single game situation, because the more they turn the ball over, the more they're going to have to be throwing and at least running passing plays, which really means running for Daniel Jones. But I guess for captain, my favorite might be George Kittle, guy we don't talk about very much for DFS, but one of the best players in football. But I think this is a matchup where they might actually look to get him going a little bit. And the Niners the Giants don't cover much of the middle of the field. So I like the idea of using Kittle. I like the idea of using Samuel, who'll be a little more popular. And my showdown specialty guy, or our showdown specialty guy for a long time has been Brandon Ayuk. So those would be my favorites. Would be the Ayuk, Samuel, Kittle as my favorite captains. Where do you stand with what you like for the captain spot? I mean, it's obvious McCaffrey's going to be the chalk, I think, here.
Yeah, you don't think of, it's so funny, you don't think of San Francisco when you just think of them in the abstract as being this team that has all this offense, But when you break it down, like you said, I mean, look at what they have. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, first of all, how nice is it to be Brock Purdy? You know what I mean? Like, what a life. You know, you got McCaffrey and Samuel, Ayuk and Kittle. I mean, you could argue that two of them are like best at their positions. You know, like maybe three.
Right.
Who knows? So yeah, they got a lot of weapons. They can do a lot of things, and it's really funny that you mentioned when you said, well, what, you know, don't forget about our showdown specialist and whatever. I thought you were going to say Kyle Juszczyk. So we'll get to him in a minute.
Everyone else is, and I'm not even opposed to it because the price, but it's just literally everyone else's favorite thing to do is like
I know.
Gonna suddenly score like a bunch of touchdowns, but
I know.
But yeah, I mean, you could throw a Juszczyk. He would be the cheapest guy I would consider in that position tonight for sure.
Yeah. But as far as captains go, again, I don't necessarily look at it the same way, but I think that, I mean, just on price, I mean, I kind of like, you mentioned Kittle, right? I mean,
yeah,
I think it's great. I think it's a great idea. Now it depends obviously on what that gets you. You know what I mean? But if you put him, and we'll do it a couple of ways. We'll screw around with like single builds or whatever, and see what that buys you. Like, for example, what I was just looking at here is just, I mean, like, this is probably not the way to do it, but if I put Kittle in the captain, I played all the guys I just talked about. Just wanted to see, you know, like what would be left over. Like, oh, there's nobody I could play for 100. You know what I mean? Like, but obviously you can play Kittle in the captain. It certainly opens up like a lot of other options. Like the one giant. Let's just say you want to do Darren Waller. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So you want to play that. Kittle in the captain probably allows you to do that a little easier than well, it's certainly easier than McCaffrey, Samuel, or Ayuk. I like that. And you know, I like your narrative, not even narrative, about just kind of get him going a little bit. I mean, when you're a big favorite and you have the weapons and can, at least on paper, can do whatever you want, you want to get the guys going that you want to get the guys going. You know what I mean? So I agree with you. I think Kittle and the captain's probably a really good idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's definitely been my first build. That was definitely my favorite one, and the other ones, you know, I'm just looking at. I think all he, Ayuk, and Samuel make a lot of sense. But if you're gonna get a big game from Kittle, you're usually gonna get 2 or 3 ones a year. I have a memory of him actually smashing as a captain for me in one of these games a couple years ago, and not that that's a reason why I should play him now, but the Giants going back for like, you know, the last 8 years basically haven't been able to cover the middle of the field, so I'm feeling more and more comfortable with that one. So I guess we start with that, and then we'll get into some plays we like. But let's talk about some of the value, because the guys who are going to show up are Kyle Juszczyk. Some people will play some Ronnie Bell. I think Elijah Mitchell's interesting. One thing is, as we know, injuries do happen, and I'm not saying, and they happen more often to McCaffrey than they do to most people. But why wouldn't we try Elijah Mitchell a little bit at 2,400? I think I'd rather do that than play Juszczyk. And the get weird ones from the Giants are just always really, really tough to try to. It's just really tough with their receiving core. I mean, I don't think I want to take a shot on Sterling Shepard. I think Bellinger might be my favorite cheapo from the Giants. And then I as far as their receivers go, I just sort of feel kind of off of them, to be honest with you. And maybe I'll reconsider, but as of right now, it's kind of hard for me to find a receiver outside of Waller, who's a tight end, that I like. How about you?
Yeah, you sort of hit it on the head with the cheapos, actually, that you brought up. One, by the way, I have no interest in Juszczyk.
Yeah.
But I like the Elijah Mitchell. He's my top-rated, sort of cheapo. And my second one is the other guy you mentioned from the Giants, the Daniel Bellinger. Again, we're not expecting too much from the Giants, so may as well just take someone who could put up a couple of points and save salary, you know, than overspend. I want to ask you about one guy who, just because he's listed, he doesn't project much ownership, and I don't really know this Giants receiving core too well. Listen, the fact is they are going to have to be throwing the ball pretty soon, I think, in this game. Who is Jalen Hyatt? I asked only because, I mean, I don't have him I haven't projected like 3 fantasy points and like 5% ownership or something. I see 2 targets. And I guess one of them he had a 58-yarder. So I guess he's showing up in some form. The only reason I bring him up is because in a similar way that like you were saying that the San Francisco's want to get some guys going. Are there guys on the Giants? I guess you have to know the team, which I don't really. That the Giants would love to get some reps and get some catches and get to whatever, especially if the game is kind of out of reach anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Jalen Hyatt's basically their fourth receiver.
Okay.
He and Shepard, you could make an argument, I guess, but like that's what's hard for me is like they don't throw the ball to their 1, 2, and 3 receivers. It's really hard to play their third. Now that usage without Barkley should go somewhere other than just Breda, who I do like, by the way. I'm totally good with using Breda. I just think he's going to be really popular. I think that is a good way to get different, is to try to play some of these receivers from the Giants that maybe are a little bit more questionable, like the Hyatt or the Shepard, but it's a way to get different. It's not necessarily a way that I really like. I think Hodgins would be my favorite if I had to pick one of their receivers overall. Hodgins and Slayton are pretty close, but I'm honestly not getting to a ton of it.
I got something. I got something for you if you want.
Okay.
Again, it's Showdown, so I literally have to talk about it. I only have 21 total guys listed on my board, so we can talk about it. We'll probably mention all of them at some point. So Matt Breida is obviously the logical guy, right? I mean, like it's Barkley's out. Breida was getting work anyway, but they do need to have another running back, right, in the game.
Right. Yeah.
And one guy I do see listed is Gary Brightwell, I guess.
Yeah, I think he would be the best one.
Yeah. But it's Showdown, so I want to look into this Eric Gray. He had no targets, no nothing. He said he had no snaps yet. Okay, but I mean, what else are they going to do? Like he's not going to Breida's not going to be in there for every snap. And if the other guy, Brightwell, is not, the answer or whatever, this is like a weird thing where they might give this guy Gray some stuff, and I would never play it in Classic. I would never play it even on a 2-game slate, but on a Showdown slate, I just kind of have to consider it. I mean, I know what you're going to say. Well, maybe you don't need to do that or whatever, but I don't know. I mean, especially if you're playing like the Millie Maker thing, like you're playing on the 222 or anything that's like reasonable. Yeah. I don't think you need to do anything like this. But if you are trying to do something like win the lottery or something like that, I think guys like this you should probably just sprinkle in.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I would prefer the Brightwell thing, but he'll have some ownership, as you mentioned. And for what it's worth, I really like the defense. I mean, in terms of the guys who I plan to use tonight, like I was looking at my projected usage, I will be higher on Debo, McCaffrey, Daniel Jones than I will be on Brock Purdy. I'm high on Breda. I think Jake Moody for the Niners kicking game is going to be pretty popular. I think I'd rather play the Niners defense. And I like the idea of the Niners defense and potentially not using Purdy, but playing like McCaffrey or one of Samuel and Ayuk and then the aforementioned Kittle, maybe as a way of differentiating a little bit. And then you get into the Giants receivers and it's just really hard to know, but I think that's going to keep them ownership spread out. And I will be the highest on Hodgins. I'll be the highest on Waller, but then I'll be the highest on Hodgins after that. I like Brightwell, but he's going to, like you said, he'll have some ownership. One guy who we didn't mention who also has been a Showdown king for us is Juwan Jennings. And his price is annoying because I feel like he should be like 3K or 2K or 1,200 or something like that. He used to be like 200. He's 4,800 and they have a lot of weapons, so I'm not quite as excited about it. But because of that, I think he gets sort of forgotten. So I'm going to be building primarily my natural builds are going to want to lead me to 5-1 and 4-2s for San Francisco. Yeah. So I'm going to try to make some 3-3s and try and exclude Purdy from a lot of my builds. You see last week for the Niners, for example, Jennings and McCaffrey, McCaffrey, I'm sorry, not Jennings, Debo and McCaffrey. Debo had 29, McCaffrey had 30 or something like that. And Kittle and Purdy had 14. He doesn't need to go off because those guys go off. That's just not how it works. So I like the idea of trying to play less Purdy as he's supposed to be the most popular player, at least in the flex of any of these players because of his price. So probably going to be looking at Daniel Jones, either the backup running back and Waller, which feels good, Brightwell and Waller, with like a Kittle, Debo, and then fill in the blank, Ayuk, maybe Jennings a little bit. That's sort of what I'm thinking about in this slate as a way of building. Do you want to try to run a SaberSim build to see what it gives you?
We're going to, but I want to talk about something else, which I talk about every week. And I just want to kind of run through this. So the spread is 10. Okay. Very few people build lineups with San Francisco -10 involved. They'll build them with San Francisco -17 like involved. Okay. And that certainly makes a lot of sense. Okay. Especially when you're looking for outliers and the San Francisco -17, like the 20-3, the 27-10, those things, they look like sort of like they have the Niners in defense, right? And all these San Franciscos and like one kind of run back from the Giants, whoever that would be. Okay. And like you said, most lineups are going to be 5-1, 4-2s, or whatever. But I'm just curious what the San Francisco -3 lineups look like. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if Giants outperformed by 7 points, like what does a closer game kind of look like? Like who? And you think about this. I'm doing an MMA video soon. This is what all you think about in MMA is not who's going to win, but what does the scores look like if they win? Okay.
Right.
So it's the same thing. So if the Giants do keep it close, what does that look like? I imagine it looks like somebody like Waller, right?
I'll tell you, it probably looks like the Giants' defense.
Well, we'll talk about that for a second, but I would certainly think that Waller and Daniel Jones, those would be two of the three, I would think. Like if you're going to use three, and maybe Breda, you know what I mean? Like maybe. And then if you did that, like Breda and the captain, I don't know. Putting anybody in the Giants and the captain is going to require a lot of cojones.
I think Daniel Jones is going to be really popular in the captain.
Think so?
Yeah, just because he's going to get fantasy points no matter what in a comeback, type of situation. I think.
I just want to see what those look like. So when you put Jones in the captain, let's say Waller and Breda. See, then you can't even play the good San Francisco guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can.
I mean, not with this left.
Not all of them, but
right. That's what I mean. You can play one of them, right?
No, Kittle's pretty cheap, and then you play Go.
Oh, you could. That's right. And then one other. Then you could play Juwan Jennings, for example.
Then Juwan Jennings. I mean, it's a pretty unusual build. I actually don't mind that very much.
This is not the worst, right? I mean, like
it's not the worst, especially because people are not going to play Jennings at that price.
And leave McCaffrey out.
And people will say, "Oh, but your running game and all this stuff, and how is it going to work?" Or you could switch Debo with McCaffrey and then play the super cheapo,
right?
Which is really going to be probably even less owned that type of build. I like that idea though.
So I don't even know if I wanted to, but I just want to see what those things would look like. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so let me run a build here, and I'm just going to use the SaberSim projections. I'm not even going to use mine. I'm just going to change a couple things. And let's build. We'll build 150 line just for kicks here. And we'll build.
Yeah, while you do this, do you ever run into situations where you end up hitting the wrong thing and you end up with like 20% of a guy who's not playing or something?
I don't do that. Like I might do it like here, like the way I just did it when I just used the SaberSim projections.
Sure.
Because with the SaberSim projections, they include guys that might not play.
Right.
But what I do, and here's one thing that I do when I upload my sheets, unless like a guy is projected by like every source, pretty much, they don't make it, into my sheets. You know what I mean? So if I put my sheets up here, you probably are pretty sure they're going to play. But what you don't get, and this is why you have to really like fish around, is you don't get those guys that might play. You know what I mean? That could, like some Lawrence Kager dude, or whatever. I'm just like staring at this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like, for example, who I don't have in my sheets? I don't have the Ronnie Bell in my sheets.
Right.
For some reason, you know what I mean? Because a couple of people didn't project him.
Right. He very well may not play. Yeah.
But very well may. And I might not have it. You know what I mean? All right. So in 150 lineups, let me see what I would get here. Players. I got to go to the top here. So it looks as though. Oops. Yeah, just. close settings. Okay, so in the captain, not a surprise, 40% McCaffrey, but you'll notice that there is a quite a bit of spreading here. Like you're going to get some lineups with forget about the total outliers. Let's see like guys with actual exposure here. Like not really 18% Samuel, 18% Purdy. But you're getting sprinkles of these others in the captain, like a 2% Kyle Juszczyk in the captain, for example. And the reason why you'll get that is you look at like those lineups. I'll pull that out. Like if you see him in the captain, look what else you get. You know what I mean?
Right,
you get
right.
everybody else, and it's an interesting concept to do that. Most people punt one guy in the flex so that they could get everybody else in. Like why not just punting the captain? You know what I mean? So you can get everybody else in. It just depends on who's available, But that's pretty much the deal. And let me just see what the stack exposure is. So of the 150 lineups, 53% of them are 5-1s, 42% are 4-2s, and only 4% are 3-3s. So what this means, okay? Then this is like kind of a neat trick. You see over here that I'm ranking them by projected score. So when you rate them by projected score, all it's running is the optimal, And what that means, this is what most people are going to be playing. You know what I mean? Not that many people really get deep into the weeds and figure out how to sort stuff. So they'll run 150, they'll run whatever. Maybe they'll leave some money on the table, whatever, and they'll just run this stuff. So my point is that without a lot of adjustments, the 3-3 build is going to be pretty contrarian, So if you wanted to do that and like force in like a bunch of 3-3s, I think that could be pretty wise. And they'll make it sort of uncomfortable, especially with a 10-point spread. But that's what in my opinion, that's what is competitive in these things are lineups that make you uncomfortable. I don't know if that applies to the 222 really. But
I think it sort of does, yeah.
But certainly in the lottery.
Yeah, and you have like just to throw out there are some options that are super cheap. It's just the problem is, so just to give an example, everybody says like Juszczyk, like what you'll see it on Twitter today. I promise if you're looking, Juszczyk automatic play. How do you not play Juszczyk here? How do you all this stuff? And my counter would be that I think that he has 0 fantasy points on the season. That would be part of the counter. But I would say that like maybe get to a little bit of Bellinger, who at least has 1 catch this season, and a guy who at least Daniel Jones is familiar with. I'm just not quite as into these super spend downs.
I am really. This is what I think about Juszczyk, and this is going to be, I guess, sort of a hot take. I think Juszczyk is going to be under 5% owned. And I'm not going to play them all anyway. I just think it's over. You know what I mean? I don't think that's. Yeah. I don't think that's the deal.
Also, remember, we were playing him with success in San Francisco games partly because these were like 14 to 13 games a couple of years ago.
And they didn't have McCaffrey for openers.
Yeah, they didn't. And by the way, just the more I think about this slate, I gotta just go back to this Eli Mitchell thing.
Yep.
One thing we love is Sunday to Thursday. Well, San Francisco's coming Sunday afternoon to Thursday night.
Yep.
If there's some time to protect McCaffrey, especially in a big spread game, when you have a really good backup running back, an elite backup running back in Eli Mitchell, maybe this is where he really gets usage. So I actually could see playing both those guys together, or just playing Mitchell as a way of getting different, and maybe even considering a captain or two. In the lottery for a guy like Mitchell, who hasn't done much this season, but this is what's going to happen as the season goes on. They're going to protect McCaffrey more in these Sunday to Thursday things, and all teams are going to do that. All teams are going to be a little more conservative with their players Sunday to Thursday because they don't want to, be ruining careers for the good players anyway. And it's the most common time people get injured on these Sunday to Thursday games.
So a couple of other things. One of them you brought up, I just kind of wrote down to get back to it. You mentioned something about not that you like them, but you mentioned the Giants defense just a little bit in terms of, I think, a way to be contrarian in some build. I forget what it was. But you want to talk about an uncomfortable play. You know what I mean? Like Giants defense. Listen, I know the ball bounces funny in the NFL. You know what I mean? And the ball gets tipped around or whatever it is. I tell you, man, that is a tough play. Just because they take care of the ball, San Francisco. You know what I mean? Like it's a tough play. I'm not getting. There's no way I'm getting there in the 222 with that. But if I get to some of that organically in my 50 milli maker shots, I'm gonna complain about it, but I'm not gonna change it.
I have no issue with the Giants defense, so I'm totally on board if you want to do that. Like that makes perfect sense to me. If you think about it, paying $1,600 more for Jennings, and the Giants defense, like I mean, literally, you're talking about one play. You have Purdy, who's as much as they protect the ball and everything, it's a lot due to system. Purdy, if there's any time to make it, he does throw across his body. He had the most of all the quarterbacks in the NFL. He had the most expected. He had the best variance of expected interceptions versus interceptions.
Really?
Yeah. So he this would be a gamble I can support. So anyway, I'm on the same page, and yeah, it should be a fun slate, and it's kind of fun to do a first look here, and I will have my early builds and some my bets of the day and all that stuff up a little later for baseball and this. Sheets, anything else before we get out of here?
Yeah, I do. Needless to say, I mean, this is Matt Breida going back to San Francisco. And the only reason I mention it is that if in fact, the Giants get down inside the 5 or whatever it is, I mean, they're going to try to get him the ball. You know what I mean? Like, I think.
I don't think they'll care at all.
You don't think they'll care at all? I guess not. If you have a chance to be competitive with the Niners, I guess you'll do it.
I think they're going to try. But maybe that is their best way, though. Like, you know what I mean? I think they are going to use him as a Barkley role. And for those people who don't remember, Matt Breida is a good pass catching back. So like it's a guy who's going to get some PPR numbers for sure.
Yeah. So I guess again the chalky options, at least my opinion, for the Giants, are going to be Breida, Waller, and Daniel Jones. I think pivots off of them. Pretty much any receiver other than Waller, I think, is a pivot off of Waller, and you want to pivot off of Breida. You could play again one of those aforementioned receivers if you want,
right?
Or you total gamble with either of the 2 running backs. I think San Francisco, like they're all the chalk. You know what I mean? I think they're all good plays. I think lineups without McCaffrey are gonna. I was about to say are probably going to be contrarian, but I don't know about that. Like if I'm playing lineups and I see that I got lineups with Samuel and Ayuk and this, that, I'm not even going to care if I'm at McCaffrey, So maybe that's not that contrarian.
Maybe, yeah. I think for me, I want to play either. If I'm not playing him, I'm going to play Eli Mitchell.
I like that.
I'm going to go for that strategy, but I think I am going to eat some more of the Eli Mitchell up. Anyway, guys, should be fun. We'll be live at 6 Eastern for baseball, and then 7:15 for the Thursday night showdown. And then after that, Rody and I will be recording a position by position for NFL this weekend. So a lot of stuff coming up later this afternoon. And good luck to everyone tonight. We'll see you guys at 6 Eastern and 7:15 Eastern for the NFL.
Who would have thought a more in-depth breakdown of the showdown slate than the MLB slate, huh?
Yeah, it's a little more interesting.
It's more interesting when I don't get disconnected as well.
Yeah, yeah, right. That's right. All right. Well, good luck. Have a good